Well, after many, many years of development and rumors, apparently Spawn will in fact actually happen. Jamie Foxx recently made some comments where he gave a few more details on what is going to occur with Spawn. He will be starring in it, and him and Todd have been very active talking back and forth about what they want to do with Spawn. Some of the news I think will be very welcome, but some of it will be, kind of questionable, at least to me. So, what is he saying? Well, that this will be a very Joker style film. What does he mean by that? I guess what I'm getting is this will be a very intense and very graphic film. They were thinking for a while it might be a TV series, and apparently they were very close, but ultimately they decided not to do it, so it will still be a film project. And whatever you want to say about Joker, and I would agree, they did press things to the limit. Now, I think for myself, Joker was a little overrated, but I would give them a lot of points where you think they're going to pull back. No, they go all the way with it, and they show some pretty intense material, which I thought they would never do, but they did. And for that alone, I do think Joker is worth seeing. At least it is very pure. The R rating is very well earned. It is an R rated film because a lot of R rated films, you go to see them, they're like, that really wasn't an R rated film. It just felt like a PG 13 with just a few extra stuff. So, whatever we're going to get with Spawn, Spawn will be a very, very intense experience. At least that part of it will be very well done. And he promises things like the cape will take up most of the screen. So we're going to get a very intense version of Spawn. However, Todd has been, I think, a little bit all over the place whether they will follow the comics. And if you know the earlier Spawn film, which I really liked, he had very mixed feelings about it, both politically as well as aesthetically. He actually thought they were too close to the comic book. I think they went too far from the comic. That's me. And there were a lot of controversies because there was unfortunately some whitewashing with the film, which initially he defended, but later he apologized. He did sell it off and he trusted the production company. I still think they did a pretty good job, but yeah, you can definitely see places they could have improved, both with the story as well as certain political elements. Well, that will not be happening here. He has much more control, and he promises very much this will not be an MCU film. Now, I think with Multiverse of Madness recently with Strange, they did a fairly good job, even though it is PG 13. It was a very intense horror film, but you did feel in many places they could have gone much further, and they kind of pressed it to the limit and then pulled back. And I'm going to do more work on this, but there are, yes, confirmation of deleted scenes which were way more explicit, way more graphic, and they decided not to do those. Now, that may be because of the way they're doing the phases and planning, so it might not be due to censorship concerns, but there were deleted scenes which apparently were way more graphic, and they decided whatever we will get with Spawn, it will be extremely graphic. It will be a very pure vision of what he thinks Spawn should be, so it will not be censored, as was the 1990s film. That said, there probably are some worries if they are going down the Joker route that, again, I appreciate what they did with Joker, but Joker really had nothing to do with the comics, and it felt so alien to me to what I think Joker as a character is. So this version of Spawn may not be very recognizable if you're a comic book fan. Now, I'm not a super hardcore Spawn person. I read about, I'm trying to remember, I think the first 36 issues, and I read a few more issues afterwards. The first couple of years of Spawn, I think, were very strong. I liked those a lot with Violator, Angela, and other characters. But more and more, it seemed to be drifting into different kind of stories I didn't care for. And the thing is, the early issues are very superhero stories, but more and more they became horror stories. And although I'm a horror fan, I wasn't a fan of horror comic books. I am now, but back then, I preferred sort of either it was going to be complete like a Vertigo book or a superhero story, whereas Spawn kind of mixed all these genres together. And the comic book itself was pretty graphic, but I can assume that even there, Todd had to be careful not to go too far because, again, even with the 1990s, they were pressing a lot of limits. They still had to work with a certain censorship regime. But now things are much more different, and things that I thought would never appear in comic books appear much more regularly. If you think Batman killing people is an intense thing, apparently Spawn will take it to a whole other level. So whatever else we're going to get with Spawn, we're going to get something extremely intense. So be ready for that. And I do think Jamie Foxx is a very talented person, but I can imagine other people being Spawn. I think if he does it, ultimately, that'll be fine. I have no issue with it. But I could imagine someone like Michael B. Jordan being a slightly better version of Spawn for many reasons. But again, this will be working with a certain budget, so it may not have the great special effects that I think even the 1990s film had, which mostly hold up. Some of them look very dated, but a lot of it does hold up, and that was very well done. Unfortunately, other elements weren't as well done as special effects, but there we are. And it did get kind of weak towards the end with the 1990s film, but overall, I still think it's a strong effort, but it definitely has its ups and downs. But again, we've been here before where they've promised Spawn, it's coming, and nothing happens, and we have to wait longer. But I'm okay with that. I'd much rather Todd takes his time, and when we do get Spawn, it will be well done. It will be his vision. It will be at least an undiluted version of the character. He has forewarned, though, he will put some politics in this version. I'm okay with that. The comic book was very political, but I know some Spawn fans don't want any politics. Well, good or bad, this may be very political and it may be very graphic. So if you like the earlier Spawns where it was somewhat political and it was somewhat horrific, but even then it was kind of limited, this may not be for you. This is definitely for the much more hardcore Spawn people and the ones who appreciate both the very strong horror elements and the very strong political elements of Spawn.